let's just go right at it. Jennifer, what's it like being a parent today in the age
uh,
of AI, in the age of creator capitalists?
is
You have how old are your kids?
my kids are 18 and 19, just about 19 and 20. So
Okay.
freshmen and sophomore in college.
Okay. So tell me about that.
It is fun, exciting, and scary all at the same time. It is really interesting to talk to them about what they're afraid of and what they're seeing. And it's also really exciting to see how they're managing things. I'm a much better parent to young adults. Parenting little kids is very different and it's hard.
Yeah.
And I think parenting young adults is hard, but at least they can have a conversation with you.
Yes.
And I'm able to have that conversation with my kids. And that is interesting. And I have two very, very different children. One is a hardcore science academic student, and the other one is just as smart and very driven, but in different things. He's super creative and applies that in everything he does.
Now your children have an extraordinarily accomplished mother who has a
Yes.
PhD in the law.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of PhD lawyers running around.
There aren't.
So, yeah. And so how does that sort of inform them that they have this learned mother, this accomplished mother?
So when they decided they were going to go to college, I set two requirements for them. I actually don't really care what they major in. I don't think it matters that much anymore. If you want to be an engineer, it might matter, but
I
I
have
don't
a
think
niece
beyond
who's
that.
about to get her doctor wings. That matters, I think.
I think you can go to medical
Can't
school.
believe she's gonna be a doctor. She's 5. What the hell's going on? Anyways, I'm sorry.
I have no idea. I'm right there with you. I'm struggling with the fact that my son is about to turn 20. But I think if you want to go to medical school, you have to take the sciences. Like what you major in,
And you can't
that
pick
might
that
make you
shit
more
up on
interesting.
YouTube or ChatGPT.
You
You can't.
can't. You've gotta take all of the hardcore biology, chemistry, OChem, calculus, all of that stuff. My daughter wants to be a neuropharmacologist. She's studying biochemistry.
God
It's
bless her.
insanely hard,
Yeah.
and I don't understand a lot of what she's saying, and I think it's really cool, and she teaches me, so that's fun.
Yeah.
The kids are doing really interesting stuff, though, and how they think, and they know that what I expect of them is that they learn to think critically and communicate that in writing.
Mm.
I think critical thinking is more important than ever. And
Yes.
that's what you learn when you're getting a PhD or you're getting a law degree, hopefully, is critical thinking and communicating that in writing.
Yes. Yes. Now, so you have been a person who certainly I have fallen in love with, we have fallen in love with, but of late, you have contributed something to us that certainly I didn't expect, which is, when we wrote Creator Capitalist, we were very specific. We said, this book is not for kids. This book is for adults who are probably at a midpoint or further in their career, who have developed some of the four capitals: relationship, intellectual, financial, and reputation, and are looking at the world right now and are looking for what's next. They know there's a big change and they want to understand that change and embrace that change and then create a legendary career for the back end of their working life, let's say. That was essentially what was in our minds. There's an interesting thing, and you know this because you write a lot. When you create something and you put it in the world, it's not yours anymore, it's the world's. And so when you got Creator Capitalist and then you started talking and writing about how powerful the ideas and the frameworks and the research in Creator Capitalist are for young people and particularly your children, and talking to them about these topics in Creator Capitalist, I think we took a step back and went, wow. And you were sort of in your velvet hammery kind of way saying to us, hey, donkeys, I know you wrote this for people who are further along in life and their careers, but just so you know, Creator Capitalist is for kids too. And you kind of whacked us a little with it in the most wonderful way. And so,
Surprised that you were surprised because
yeah, so tell me about that.
it seemed an obvious connection to me. And I think I learned this actually from my children in they are both really good at building relationships. And that probably started when they were young because uh, at the end of the year, parents all give teachers gifts, right? And I didn't know what to give. So I had my children write thank you notes. And at the end of every year, they had to write 3 thank you notes. And it could be to anybody that made a difference in their year. So it could be a teacher, a staff member, an administrator, a friend, anybody. And they did that every year, starting in 3rd grade. And then when they graduated from high school, they had to write 12, one for each year. Both kids wrote a lot more than 12, which I thought was interesting. But the point was that you need to recognize that there are other people in your life and that there are people there who've made a difference and have helped you, because nobody does this alone. And I didn't have language for it until I read Creator Capitalist. And then that was obviously relationship capital, and it built a reputation for them. And everybody knew that my kids were the ones who wrote thank you notes. And they wrote them on real paper with a real pen. And I can tell you, my son's handwriting is appalling. You cannot read it. But his people figured it out. They knew what it said. And he's 2 years out of high school. So he still gets like messages from people that he wrote to. And
Hmm.
when he was in 12th grade, he wrote to his 4th grade teacher
To say thank you for making a
to say
difference.
thank you for making a difference. His 4th grade teacher. And now my daughter, as a freshman in college, wrote to her junior in high school neuroscience teacher
Hmm.
because something he taught her in neuroscience in high school made her score better on her biology midterm, because they didn't cover it in biology, but she knew it from there. And so she dropped him a 30-second email. Thank you. And he wrote back immediately. Like he thought it was the coolest thing.
Right.
Because once
Sure.
you
Of
leave high
course.
school, right? And that she obviously had a relationship with this teacher in high school, but that just builds on it. And so when Creator Capitalist came out, it's like, well, duh, they're doing all of these things.
Yeah.
And my son is a political science major at a very small college, and he loves working on cars. He got himself a job in the auto shop. And
Love
then
it.
from there, he became machine shop qualified,
I
which got
love
him
it.
into the engineering lab. And so he got to know the professor that ran the engineering lab. Turns out my son can use all the machinery in the engineering lab better than the engineering students. And he also happens to be a great teacher. Like he's super patient. I think there's a little bit of competitiveness in him. When he started there, they had to build engines for thermodynamics class, and he could build an engine better than the juniors in college. And he built his faster. They had a whole semester. He did his in a month.
Let me interrupt you for a sec. There's something fascinating here that's cool, which is on one hand, he's in poli-sci, right? Which is, let's call it more of a knowledge worker, more of a white collary kind of a path. I have an uncle who's now retired, but he was a community college poli-sci professor for his entire career, and he was absolutely wonderful at it. Anyway, so he's got that going on, but then he's a grease monkey,
He's a total grease monkey. He's a total grease monkey.
right? What a great thing to have both those things going on.
Yeah. I mean, he's restoring a 65 Mustang at the morning, or resto modding, he calls
Does he
it.
have a customer who wants to buy it? Because if not, I might be that customer.
I think he just is having fun, and he might take it out and race it a bit, and it's going to be cool. He's literally
Yeah.
rebuilt it from the ground up.
Does he
And
put a Coyote engine in it? I bet.
he has not, because he cannot afford a Coyote engine.
Well, yes. Well,
But he
there's a
has
money
put
problem. Yes.
he has put a bigger one in, and he put all LED lights and fancy brakes and fancy
Right.
wheels, and I don't know, it's got some computer
S-
starter thing. I don't
Super ding
understand how it
dong. Super
works. Yeah,
sexy.
exactly. But he's now the TA for the engineering lab at his college,
And he's a poli-sci student.
and he's a poli-sci student. He's also the TA for the introduction to machining class, which all of the freshmen have to take. And they had to get an exception for him to be able to do it because it's an engineering student's job. I mean, he's getting paid to do it.
So, as a mom and as somebody, I mean, you read Creator Capitalist before it came out, or at least a big chunk of it before it came out. How do you think about teaching your kids to be creator capitalists?
Well, now I have language for it, which I didn't
Right.
have before, and that's helping a lot. And you mentioned that I am writing on it. And I have had both my kids read what I've written. And I was talking to a friend of my daughter yesterday. My daughter was telling her friend all about what I was doing. So I was listening, and that was interesting. And she goes, Mom's writing for adults, but it's really not for adults. It's really for us. We should all be reading this, which I thought was really cool. Like, she's willing
Wow.
to tell her friends that they should be reading something that her mother writes. But we talk a lot about the importance of relationships. And we talk a lot about the fact that those relationships build a reputation. And when you turn up late for class, that builds a reputation. When you don't turn your homework in or you do a bad job, that builds a reputation. When you ask questions in class or go see a professor in office hours, not because you need help, but because genuinely you're really interested in something or want to have a discussion, that builds a reputation. And our house, when they were growing up, we had dinner together almost every night. And it was a debate. You had to be quick. There was a lot of discussion. We talked about all kinds of topics, stuff that they were doing, but also stuff that I do or their dad was doing and was interested in. And you had to keep up. It didn't matter what age you were. And so from there, that's building intellectual capital. Right? That's building confidence. And that is something that I think kids can do from any age. They certainly did in my house because they didn't have a choice. Now we talk about that. We talk specifically about the intellectual capital that my son is building
Hmm.
by
In
learning how to
multiple
do all this machining.
categories, right?
Exactly. I mean,
And subcategories underneath that, I'm sure.
well, and when he was first thinking about whether he was going to go to college or not, and he wasn't sure that he wanted to go, my concern was, what is this kid going to do? Right?
Right.
He's not a sit in a classroom, take notes, regurgitate out information on
Right.
an exam. That's not who he is. And he picked a great school for him. But then I was thinking, what's he going to do when he finishes? Actually,
What
this
happens
kid
in
is,
the real world now?
yeah, you're not coming back and living in my house, dude.
Yeah.
So
What
let's just
happens
be really
now?
clear.
Fly, be free.
Yeah. And he may be better set up than almost everybody else because he's really interesting. He's made relationships in this car community
Yeah,
with people of all ages. They're not just his age.
of course.
And some of them collect really cool cars. And we live in the Santa Clara Valley, Silicon Valley. He's met some very successful
Yes.
people through cars. And
Yeah,
these
because
people are
guess who
introducing him.
buys expensive refurbished Mustangs?
You know,
Silicon
he's got
Valley
one. Yeah.
successful entrepreneurs and company builders.
Right, and there are guys who collect Porsches, and there's guys who collect Ferraris and all of that stuff,
Right.
and he's gotten to know them, and he learns a ton from them.
That's an asset.
It's an intellectual capital asset. It's a
Absolutely, that
relationship,
is.
and he has a reputation. I mean, he's had people go to bat for him in getting jobs. One of the things he loves to do is take pictures of cars. There's a surprise, and he's gotten some jobs because
He can
these
take a
guys have
picture of a
said,
car.
he gets cars. Like, he can't just take a picture. He actually understands a car, and he understands those of us that are collecting these cars.
Right. It's interesting because I love watches. I have cars too, but I love watches. And it's mostly men in various online groups. I don't know why this is, but men who like watches like to take pictures of their watches and post them on the internet and comment on each other's watches, even if they have the exact same watch.
Yeah, that's
It
part of
just,
the internet now, though. That's just what people
and
do.
it's fascinating, actually. And you could tell there are some guys who really know how to take a photo of a watch. I am not one of those guys. I'm actually thinking, is there like, I bet you there's a YouTube on how to take a really good picture of a watch. So I'm going to go do that because this is this micro skill that some people have that I don't, that I would really like now.
You
But
can learn anything now, Christopher. That's why,
my point is, as a
knowledge is free.
photographer, if you love the thing you're photographing and you know all about the thing you're photographing, you're going to take a much different photograph than somebody who maybe is a generically good photographer, but in this case, for example, doesn't have the knowledge and love of cars.
Yeah, but I think that applies to everything. If you love what
Yes.
you're doing, right? And that's
Yeah.
part of what being a creator capitalist is about.
So here's the other thing. So you made me think something that I don't think you know you made me think. So The four capitals are presented as a framework, as mental scaffolding, right? And they're also presented as a flywheel. That is to say, intellectual capital allows you to kind of hone your different, which will then allows you to produce results, which builds relationships, which builds reputation. Results lead to economic outcomes, and you can see a flywheel spin. So have that in one part of your brain for a sec. And then in the other part of your brain sitting next to it, what I love to do with the young people in my life as they get to particularly kind of late teenager, like right where your kids are, is sit down with them and have a conversation with them about money. And I have a very particular conversation with them about money. I want them to examine their relationship with money. And often I'm the first person to talk about their relationship with money. Most people just think money is money, and they don't think much about, well, what's my relationship with money? Anyway, so we have that conversation, and that if they view money through a particular lens, that is to say, a lens to fuel their life design, then money starts to look very different than when you look at it through different lenses. Anyway, so I have that conversation, and then I sit down with one of the AIs and I play look what happens with money over time, right? And I take $10,000 and I say, okay, imagine you had $10,000 and you put it in the S&P 500. Do you know how much the S&P 500 makes every year? And they go, no. I said, well, on average over the last 70 years, it's about 10%. They go, what? Anyway, then I start playing with scenarios, and sooner or later, I teach them if they're able to bank $100,000, they're going to be millionaires. And we play with the scenarios. Part of being a category designer is connecting things that might not feel connected. So if you imagine the financial conversation with a young person, what's really happening in that conversation is trying to teach them about the flywheel of saving and investing, and that how that builds and compounds over time, and the magic of that compounding flywheel. Well, the four capitals are exactly the same thing. And what you made me realize is if young people, your children's age people, understand the four capitals and understand that it is a flywheel that they can get spinning, and each one of the capitals fuels the other, right? If you understand at 19 that the career, the life that you're building is predicated on getting those four capitals spinning in that flywheel in the direction that you really want to go, that's a powerful lens, just like the lens of teaching them to invest and put money in the S&P 500 in the stock market. And it was like, maybe we were wrong about creator capitalists being for, let's just call them more middle-aged type people. Jennifer's really teaching us something here. That if we can teach these kids the four capitals and we can talk about some of the other frameworks in creator capitalists you think might work for kids. But it just struck me, it's the same thing. That compounding
Exactly.
flywheel is the same thing.
100%. And like you said, you sit down with these young people and talk about money. I talk about it in what I'm writing and with my children as start now. Start now. People say I have this friend that I've had since third grade. Well, if you can have a friend since third grade, you can have other relationships that go on. Yes, they take work, but everything takes work. And it doesn't have to be work. It can just be, hey, I was thinking about you, saying hi, haven't seen you in a while, or this was really helpful. And your reputation doesn't go away. And the things that you learn don't go away. So just be conscious of it is what I'm trying to say. Is it doesn't have to be hard work. It doesn't have
Yes.
to be, oh my God, I have to talk to X number of people today and I have to build this today. No, go about your life, but like really think. And
Yes.
that's what I would hope for every young person. And whether you start at 12 or 14 or 18 or 35 or 50, it's the same game.
Yeah. It's the exact same game. Now, there's another component of the creator capitalist work. I've been sort of anticipating this conversation, jamming on this with you. So if you accept the premise for a second that gets taught in creator capitalist around The way to have a magical career, right, a legendary career, is if you can pinpoint your different superpower and connect your different to making the biggest difference possible, and then scaling that different with AI, that's the magic. When you can connect your different to making a difference in a meaningful way, and that then becomes your career, I can't imagine a more fulfilling life professionally than that. I just cannot.
I can't either.
And so now with younger people, here's what I found. And this is an oversimplification, but stay with me for a sec. There's two kinds of people. There are the people for whom they've always known or they've known for a long time what they wanted to do, and they have found their place in the world and they pursue that. So I mentioned my niece, Julia. I was talking to her father, Jack, last night. Um, this kid's unbelievable. She's an extraordinary young woman. She's got everything going on, and she's about to become an MD. And she's wanted to be a doctor for a very long time. And so there's a certain kind of person who knows what their place in the world is. And yet there's a whole bunch of us, like me, maybe like you, you'll tell me,
Yeah,
yeah, I
me
figured as
too.
much, who we go to find a place in the world and we can't find one. We don't fit in. And that can be an existential crisis, particularly for a younger person, can be for an older person as well. But of course, when you realize there's no place for me in the world, what there is to do is to make your own place. And in a lot of ways, Creator Capitalist is about that. And so I'm just curious through that lens of helping younger people either accelerate their path, their known path, because they know what they want to be, they found their place. And for those of us who didn't, there was no place, we had to make our place. Creator Capitalist actually accelerates our ability to create something. So I'm just curious through that lens of finding place and making place for oneself in the world, how you think about Creator Capitalist.
I think that in the world that these young adults are gonna be facing, they're gonna have to do that. It isn't like when I graduated from law school, you graduated from law school, you passed the bar exam, you went and got an entry level job. It was kind of dependent on your grades, maybe dependent on who you knew, but everybody did basically the same job at different law firms. And then you worked your way up to partner, or you became a judge, or yada, yada, right? I think there are going to be fewer of those jobs going forward. You go and get a consulting job. You go get a job in an investment bank. I think going forward, there's going to be less, oh, I went to X school. I have Y degree. I get this job. I think it is going to be that intellectual capital is going to be really important. How are you different? What are you bringing to the game? And the same thing, the kids say, oh, well, I have to do all these things to get into college. My son, who did not do any of those things, he went to a very different high school, one-on-one high school. He did not play sports. He was not a captain of anything. Applied to 12 colleges. He got into every single one he applied to. Why? Because he's different. He does interesting, cool stuff.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and he had a story to tell. And I think that's going to be more
So
and more
this is
important.
another interesting thing that we hear, and you are helping us blow to smithereens, which is, well, I'm a young person. I look at the four capitals. I look at intellectual capital. I don't have any of my own intellectual capital. I'm 19. Well,
I
what
call
what
BS.
okay, so go from there. BSN.
I call BS because and I was that place where I did not think I had intellectual capital, right? Despite having multiple doctorates, because it's a bunch of paper, right?
Can I call you doctor?
You can. My children's friends all call me Doctor Doctor. Yeah, they think it's hysterically funny.
Doctor Jennifer. I like it.
Yeah. It is you have it because you can think. Like how you approach a problem is intellectual capital. You can build it from there. Like, how did you figure out how to do this? How did you solve that problem? How are you studying? Like with my daughter, I'm actually better at Claude than my kids, but I spend a lot of time working on it and thinking about it. And so I my daughter
Can I
is
just interrupt you there? This is a side zebra hole, but you opened the hole. Isn't that an incredible statement that you're more of a Claude expert than your kids?
yes, but
And I
I'm really
think
into learning stuff, and they're deep in school trying to just figure out how to do it. I
right,
have
and when you're
space.
not in a program and you can freeform jazz it a little bit,
Mhm.
um, and you give yourself the benefit of time, you sit there and go, spend the next 3 hours fucking around with Claude and see what happens.
It's time. I created a Claude set of skills that will log into their classroom Canvas or whatever they have to log in, check to see if anything has been added to the site since it last logged in, download all of it, summarize it, send them an email that summarizes it, and then if it's stuff to prepare for a quiz or a test, prepares the quiz. Why? Because as you call it, donkey work. That's donkey work. Like,
That's donkey shit. Let's get the
yeah, it's
AIs to do all the donkey stuff.
and these kids do not want to be logging into a bunch of websites and having to find this. It's not fun. It's boring. They don't
So
like
wait a minute.
email.
Mom built an AI agent to automate some of the donkey stuff in the kid's life and
Yes.
said, here are your agents. Now you don't have to do all the
Yeah, it
bullshit.
also they also have a dashboard that comes up with everything that is due, when it's due, everything they're working on, all that stuff. Because they both use Google, and so that makes it a lot easier right now, having Google Mailing and Google Calendar, and so it can pull straight out of that. I built it for me, let me be honest. I built it
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, but I have shared it with them, and my daughter is trying
But
to
you're
explain
building,
it to her
I just,
friends.
you're a PhD, doctor,
Yeah.
mom, um, 19, 20-year oldish kids, and you're building AI agents to help you manage your life. And then you have an aha that goes, wait a minute, those little snot-nosed children of mine aren't necessarily always paying attention to being on top of things. I'm gonna AI agentify them. I'm gonna agentify them.
Yeah, I mean,
So
my son has
the agentic mother is agentifying her children.
yes, yes. I have not made them install it, like, they have to figure it out. I have given them instructions on how to do it, but well, I didn't. My AI agent wrote the
Yes, of course.
instructions on how to do
Right.
it.
Because that's donkey
Um,
work too.
and my son has some learning differences just like you, and executive function is not his strength.
Not mine
So,
either. I never know where the keys are, ever.
yeah. So I just said, "You don't need to have that as a strength." Like, when I was in school, you had to have that as a strength. You don't need that anymore. The AI does that.
Yeah.
All you have to do is have it open on your browser tab.
Well, it's like getting places now, right? We didn't have nav. I don't know how the hell I ever got anywhere with a nav. I can get lost with the nav on. I don't know how I
Yeah.
ever got anywhere. Actually, I got a funny one for you. My wife Carrie was so this morning I'm getting coffee and I say, wow, that sounds a lot like rain. And sure enough, it's raining. Maybe I hadn't paid attention, but I was not aware there was rain in the forecast. So we have this nice garden, as you know, and there's a wonderful sitting area out there. So she says, go get the cushions and put them in because they're going to get wet. I'm like, well, was it really going to rain that much? So I asked ChatGPT. I said, hey, what's the weather like today? It told me. And then I said to ChatGPT, should I take the cushions in? And ChatGPT told me to. And my wife goes, you can't do shit now without talking to your freaking AI, can you? And I said, well, it's funny because the last time this happened, I asked ChatGPT and it told me I didn't have to take the cushions in, but it's saying I have to today.
Yeah, and I don't wanna take the cushions in.
No, it's raining. I don't want to go
I
out
need a
there and
second
do that.
opinion. I need a second opinion. Yeah, it's just for me, it's interesting, but the kids like, my son uses it just to help him get started. He uses Claude to get started. Um, in at universities still, there are a lot of professors that are wary of the use of Claude or ChatGPT or any of them and ban it from their classrooms, which I find super annoying.
I think it's actually criminal. We should be teaching our kids to create with AI and not teaching our kids that AI equal bad.
It's not going away,
And
people.
using AI to do your homework or to study or to do whatever it is, that's not cheating. It's not cheating.
It is if what you do is give them the assignment and have them write the paper and you don't think or criticize, it might not be a good idea.
Sure, but you know what?
But
The reality is, listen, my mother, we didn't have very much at all, single mother, working class. But when the World Book Encyclopedia guy came to the door, the pitch really works,
Mhm.
right? The pitch
We
is you
had
don't
one
want to have
growing up.
morons for children, right? So we got the encyclopedia. Well, guess what? When your teacher said, hey, write a paper on ancient Egypt or whatever, well, you could just go to the World Book and copy that shit down. It took longer. But in other words, if you wanted to plagiarize or if you wanted to not do the homework in, let's just call it the spirit of what the homework is,
Yes,
there was always a way to cheat,
always.
right? So, sure, do we want a world where you have that paper to write on ancient Egypt and you go to ChatGPT and you say, write me a 1,200 word essay on ancient Egypt and I'm done? Is that the world? No, of course not. That's not what we want. But we want the kid to learn with AI and co create the paper with AI.
Exactly, and my daughter uses it, so what she does is she uploads everything from her biology and chemistry classes that they
Hmm.
get, and they get an immense amount of material.
Right.
All of it gets loaded into a Claude project. All of her notes get loaded into the Claude project, and then Claude teaches her. So she was struggling. I said, have it teach you as a fifth grader, have it teach you as a 10th grader, have it teach you as a college freshman. It writes quizzes. Like she gives them all the practice tests and practice quizzes, and then it creates new ones, and then it grades them, and then it makes new
Yes.
quizzes based on what she's struggling with. You couldn't do that before.
No.
And it's
No.
amazing.
See, this is when we say make a difference at scale, this is exactly what we're talking about, right? It was in a pre AI world to do that level of, let's just call it customization of learning
Mhm.
was very, very hard. And it was never going to be anything like what it is now, right? So why would we not want our children doing that?
She's learning the material better than anybody.
Exactly.
Her friends are blown away. They're like, "You did what?"
Right.
Before her last quiz, she said to Claude, "I want you to make the hardest quiz you can make for me. The hardest questions you can ask." And the professor still came up with a question that Claude didn't come up with. So
Right.
now she's giving the questions that were on the quiz back to Claude and say, "Hey, you blew it. This is a harder question."
So she's teaching Claude how to teach her based on the teaching she's getting from her educators. Yes? Okay. So how could that not be additive? How could
It's
that not be considered legendary, right? The teachers in the traditional system are teaching her the things she needs to learn. She's studying a very important thing, a very technical thing, a very you better be smart to learn this fucking thing because this is a very smart person thing, right? So it's a lot to get your head around what she's grappling with. She's able to take all of the stuff that she gets from, let's just call it traditional education, the papers and the books and the notes and the whatevers, right? Dump all that stuff into Claude and do this back and forth where Claude identifies her weaknesses and then builds quizzes off the weaknesses until she's acing the weaknesses. That's what you just told me, yes?
That's right. And then what she does is, I don't know if you've heard of the Feynman technique. So Richard Feynman was a Nobel Prize winning physicist, and he has a technique for learning, which is basically you teach someone else.
Look,
And
you want to learn
she's
how to
using the
ski? You want to learn
Feynman
how to
technique with
ski?
Claude.
Teach someone else how to ski.
I think that's true of most things. Teach somebody
No, it's
else.
isn't
But
that
you can teach
and you
Claude. You don't have to
you
teach
just have to
anybody
be
else.
one step or two steps ahead of the
That's right.
student to teach the student, right?
And that's what I'm doing with Claude for the kids. I'm a step or two ahead of them right now. But she said teaching Claude is really interesting because it already knows the answer, right? So if you blow it, Claude tells you, no, that's not right. But it's a great way to learn. And you couldn't do that before because you were like learning with a group of friends.
And let me make a statement and see if it lands for you. There's multiple things. What's your daughter's name?
Emily.
Emily. So there's multiple levels of what's going on with Emily. But one of them is she is co-creating her education with the AI in a customized way that then she can take back into, let's just call it the traditional system, and win. So she's learning how to co-create and learn with the AI while learning the subject matter stuff, which in the process of doing the learning and the teaching and the creating with AI allows her to ace the traditional stuff.
So can I build on that, Christopher and Jennifer? Like in the old world of education, roles were static. Professor was a professor, TA was a TA, student was a student. What you're now saying is with AI and Claude and whatnot, the roles can be and move around. The
Mhm.
student can be the teacher, professor, which forces them to learn. As you said, the Feynman technique is absolutely you want to learn you want to master anything, teach it. But there is also the idea of if you cannot explain a complex concept simply, that just means you don't really understand it either,
That's
right?
right.
So you have all of that dynamic, and then I'll throw in my youngest Luke, who's 18. He's headed off to college next year, and he helped build the Pirate Eddie bot. And part of what I've been encouraging him to do, and maybe I just need Jennifer to tell him that because he won't hear it from me as well, but like is build a Pirate Eddie bot for OChem, for whatever class that you have coming up there, right? Because all of those professor stuff, probably the lectures are online.
Yep, they
Probably
are.
you can get all their papers and just upload all of that to Delphi and that build yourself a 24/7 TA that doesn't have constrained office hours, that can answer anything you want. And by the way, in the building of your, OChem TA Eddibot type of a thing, you will learn the stuff better. You will fine tune it better to teach you this and that. And what I told them was, you can probably charge your buddies $50 to access it. And there you go. You got your spending money for college.
I have been trying to get both my kids to do that. They haven't done it yet, but, it's absolutely. And there's so many resources out there that you can pull on to do that. What was interesting in talking to Emily was, she's at the University of Texas at Austin. It's a good school. And some of her friends won't use it. They are like, "This is too complicated. I don't have time." And Emily's like, "If you would just put in like half an hour or 40 minutes, I will teach you how to do this. Because all this stuff that you're using from me, I just got off what I built.
You
And
know
I
what's
think
weird
they're
about
gonna
that,
regret it."
Jennifer and Christopher? Like, I can't think of, Christopher, another technology. Like, generally speaking, when new technologies come out, it's the youngins that master it first before the
Mhm.
native analogs and stuff. And AI, for some reason, seems to be not
Yeah.
the same. I don't know why.
Well, and there's actually another interesting thing. I have a nephew who is radically anti-AI. So there's a strand or strain in Gen Z that's kind of giving the middle finger to this stuff. It's the teenager or the early 20s person who's into vinyl, right? They hate AI. It's part of an identity thing, which I don't understand. I mean, I understand, but it doesn't make any sense. Let me put it that way. So it is an interesting time. There's also another thing that sits right next to that, Eddie. If you look at any of the numbers about the Fortune 500 and their success rates with AI, they're reporting failure rates depending on whose data you want to believe. I don't know what Gartner's saying right now. We could look it up, but they're reporting failure rates in the 70 to 80% area range, right? In terms of we spent all this money doing a thing on AI and it didn't yield the result. That data is coming back as very, very high. We have an explosion of solopreneurs and creator capitalists. Creator capitalist is a year that's been an idea as a category is roughly a year old, and now it's a movement. And if you look at the data, and I don't have it in front of me, but if you look at the data, small business and solopreneur businesses, the numbers are through the roof. And so what's going on here? Well, a big part of what's going on here is one person using AI can become a creator capitalist and produce economic outcomes that before took a small company or an agency or a small firm to produce, right? And we're seeing it all over the place. Stories of people inventing little agentic businesses that are cash flowing millions of dollars a year. And so there's this fascinating thing where the status quo is having a very hard time figuring it out. But the people who are going through some kind of a life quake, the people who are wanting to make a change for a good reason or a negative reason, they were forced into it, whatever it is, those people tend to be a little bit older and they're giving themselves the time and they're doing what Jennifer's doing. So the point is, it is fascinating that we have younger people who are being told by the education system and others, not so much on AI. And then we have older people who are exiting the legacy corporate world who's struggling with AI and thriving with AI. You got 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds building businesses with an AI co-founder. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah. I think it's kind of scary to a lot of people because they don't understand it and they know it's going to change things because you can see it changing things already. And it's not that artificial intelligence hasn't been out there in the past, but it hasn't been so in your face, I think, where you can really see it and it's available to the consumer. We had it in businesses before. We analyzed data, which is what these are doing, but it's now there and it's like, oh my God, this is going to change things. And people don't like change. Change is scary. Change is hard.
This change is so great. This change
I
is
think it's
so
so
great.
cool. I think it's amazingly cool. And I am not generally a first adopter or a first mover. I like to see what's going to play out. But in this case, I've been all over it because I just
All
think
over it.
the things that you can do with it are awesome. And maybe because I really like to learn, right? I'm really good at school. I've done a lot of it. And so learning is one of my things. And you can learn a lot. Not only are you learning how to use the AI, you're learning what it's teaching you or what you're working on it with. I think that may be one of the reasons that my kids are more early adopters because they grew up in a household where learning and trying stuff was encouraged. And again, living in the valley, like we want you to fail. They're half British. The British don't particularly like to fail. And it's not rewarded in their culture, but it is rewarded in the culture here in the Silicon Valley. And we would celebrate failure. And then
So
what did you learn from it?
I don't know if you have covered this already. So can we do the Dickens exercise? So we
Oh,
go
we haven't
Ghost of
done it yet.
Christmas. Okay.
We
So
haven't done it yet.
so I think you nailed it. Is like if you love to learn, it's probably the number one thing correlated with, willingness to do well with AI, right? Willing to learn, open to fail. Those two things probably go hand in hand with that, right? So, and that's you in spades, right? Because I think we've joked about this. Like you are our member of the first Academy cohort. Katrina at the time was like, I don't know if this is the right timing for you. Like, nope, it's the right timing, and you were very adamant about it, and you were
Yeah, I
absolutely
was.
right with it. And so, if you were Emily's age, my son Luke's age, and you just started out of college, love to learn, and if you were an 18-year-old today, what do you imagine you would do? Like you're going to UT, you're going to any great school of these places. Like, how would you imagine it plays out for you as somebody who loves to learn and is not afraid to fail?
I think using it the way that Emily has started to use it, where she is using it to learn how to do things, learn how to learn chemistry, biology. She's taking philosophy of art, not her most exciting class, but it's a general ed. And she doesn't love the postgrad student that's teaching it. So she is using the AI to help her learn what she needs to learn because class is boring and you don't need to actually go. And let's face it, if you've been in school for any length of time,
Amen. Hallelujah. This is the way.
you have had a teacher or professor who is just boring. I mean, my criminal procedure professor in law school, there was a transcript of the class. Like you could literally follow along with the jokes and everything. He knew if you weren't there, but that might have been because I was president of the student body. So if I didn't attend, he noticed. But you have Claude now to teach you what you actually need to know. So she goes, it's kind of interesting when you give it to Claude. Because I said, well, Claude knows how you like to learn, right? You have built a number of projects with Claude. So, that's what I would do. I would use it there. I think the idea of building your own bot and then selling it to friends for 25 or $50 for the semester
So
is
legendary.
awesome. I think it's
That
awesome.
that's the equivalent of back in the day when you would pay somebody to do a test for you.
Or you buy a keg and you sell,
Yeah.
cups at the
Yeah,
door
no,
and stuff, right?
it's genius. And as you're both talking, what I'm thinking about, I go back to the four capitals working in a flywheel, which we talked a bunch about before you were able to join, Eddie, and this conversation that, oh well, I'm 19, I don't have any intellectual capital. Okay, well, if you are co-creating your education with AI and achieving superior outcomes as a result, guess what? It's what we talked about, right? You have the intellectual capital of what you're learning, which is absolutely intellectual capital, but you also have the intellectual capital of learning how you learn to do the learning with the AI, which is valuable intellectual capital, which you could actually sell to your friends. Or you could go even further, right? If I was your daughter and I was figuring this shit out, I might create an Emily bot. And for people taking that, what was the class with the TA that nobody liked?
Philosophy of art.
Philosophy of art. Great. I would create the Emily philosophy of art bot, like the Pirate Eddie bot. You could charge your in Delphi, and you could charge your
Oh my goodness.
friends $10 a month to subscribe to your bot. My point, though, is it's so powerful, and you were the one that nailed it, Jennifer. When you say to a young person, you have intellectual capital, you have relationship capital, you have reputation capital, and even though you might not have any financial capital or very little of it right now, guess what? Those three capitals are what drives the financial capital, right? And if they start understanding that there's a multiple layers of learning that's happening for them, they're learning the content of the category of the education that they're in, but they're also learning how to learn with AI, and they're learning how to co-create with AI, and they're learning how to teach the AI, how to teach them to learn, et cetera, et cetera. And if they're really smart, I argue with AI all the time. That's totally bullshit. The other day, ChatGPT tried to tell me Charlie Kirk was alive. I was like, Charlie Kirk's dead, right? So it does hallucinate. And I'll say stuff to it, like I'll say to Claude, hey, listen, I want you to triple check these facts. My name is going on this. I'll take entire sections of a document from Claude, and then I'll dump it into Perplexity, and I'll say, is this true? Or argue against this, right? Anyway, when we're doing these things, when we're co-creating with our partner AI, we're learning how to learn, and we're learning how to create with the AI. And if you're 19 or 22 in a world where the teachers are telling you everything we've been talking about is bad and wrong and you shouldn't be doing, which is terrible, you have a massive advantage, don't you, Jennifer?
100%. And what I want any young person that I'm talking to or that my kids are talking to is to realize that, like, this is an advantage that you have. Put in the time and figure it out. It's not hard. And play with it. You can't break it. I mean, you were happy to play with an iPad when you were 4 because you knew you couldn't break it. And if you did, you just give it to somebody else. AI fixes itself.
So with all of this, you can't break it. And I love this comment, Christopher, learning how to learn. Cause like this is the one thing that I think I just feel so passionate about is that there's not just one way to learn. And that the kids who, we just went for the last time, our kid, went through the whole college process, and it's a completely stressful process, and your heart breaks because, you don't want the kids to over internalize the labels that come out from where you get in, where you don't get in, all that kind of good stuff, right? And the reality is, what the kind of learning that the traditional system rewards is memorization and regurgitation. And if you are good at that, you can listen, you can take notes, and you can read, and then regurgitate, you'll do great in school. But as you were just kind of saying, Christopher, when you argue with Claude and ChatGPT and put into Perplexity and say argue against this and that, that's a different style of learning. Learning by combat, so to speak, right? Like, can you
Yeah,
defend
listen,
your ideas?
and I'll say, are you sure? And the other thing I'll tell it, listen, it has all kinds of bias.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll ask it, you talk about political science, I'll ask it a political type question. And every time I do, I say, remove your bias.
My favorite class in the entirety of my college experience was called War in the Nation State
Well,
and
that's
taught by
interesting.
John Mearsheimer, who is, just he's gotten very popular because I guess he predicted the Russia would invade Ukraine like 10, 15 years ago, way back when, was like, look, if you invite NATO in, kind of international reality theory says that, when nations attack each other, when they're rising and falling, and they want to prevent that from happening in life, right? So you welcome Ukraine into NATO, Russia's going to invade, and he was right about that. And when I was in college, we had just invaded Iraq, right? Bush won, right? And it was the whole thing of like, would this be quick? Would this be short? Just like we're having now in the Iran thing. Is this going to be quick? Or is it going to be short, right? And my most vivid memory, even though the class was amazing, Mearsheimer was an amazing lecturer, an amazing thinker, was him and his TA just arguing with each other in front of the class. This war is going to be short. No, it's going to be long. It's going to be short. It's going to be long. And they're like, and they were placing bets on it, right? And so you when you go from kind of memorization and regurgitation to learning by combat, and then learning by outcome, let's put some money on this. Like, because like I think at the end of the day, if we can impart to our kids memorization and regurgitation, one level learning, right? And I stole this from Naval, right? The ability to predict the future is another entire level of intelligence. I don't care what you have memorized. If you can predict the future, you are 10x smarter than that person who just memorizes and regurgitates. And then the third level of intelligence is, did you achieve what you want out of life? Did you get the outcomes? Because it's one thing to be able to memorize and another thing to be able to predict the future. And there's a third entirely different kind of intelligence to have the guts and the cojones to say, I am going to take action and take a risk based on what I believe the future is going to play out. And did I get, I won the beer bet, I won $20. Or I bet my career on something that didn't yet exist. And now I'm thriving in, or, I built an AI bot for OChem and now I make 10 grand a month because, it's gone viral and every kid at the UT and, because, isn't that's the school, right? If you see somebody you think is pretty, you better go talk to them because you'll never see them again.
There's 40,000 students, undergraduate students or something like that. It's crazy. But I think one of the things, the question that I'm asking now is, what is the life you want? It doesn't mean it's going to be the first step. Like you don't get that at 20 or 22, but work backwards from the life you want and figure out how you're going to get there. And all those parts of the flywheel are what are going to get you there. And we've talked before, you guys, there's an idea for older adults that it starts with the intellectual capital and they don't necessarily know they have it. Mine is you have relationships. Start with a relationship capital. And then you can watch it spin from there. And Chris and I talked earlier about reputation, and you will learn that you actually have intellectual capital from your friends. Like, what are your friends coming to and asking you for help with? That's your intellectual capital.
And what I love about that is you said, we see it in kids, and Christopher, you see it in your nephews, is relationship capital. The kids who are good friends, that sticks out as a parent. You notice that thing, right? When your kids' friends are good to them and they're good to each other. You notice that stuff, and you know the kids that are a little out for themselves. Relationship, like the ability to build relationships because you are, your give to get is intuitively positive wherever you go. I notice that, and I will always pour into a young person if I see that is strong. And then reputation capital is another one. Do you show up on time? Are you a person of your word? Do you say the thing that you do and then you do the thing that you say? Do you have standards? There's and like I'll give you a little one. Like Luke loves to go to Great America. And when they were all kind of like sophomores and juniors, and Great America from us is about an hour drive, and Luke was, I'm gonna go. And I was like, who's driving? And he's like, my friend's driving. And I'm like, no way. I will drive you an hour up and then wait and drive you back or put you in an Uber. You are not getting in that car. And his friend was totally offended by that, right? He was like, what? And you know what? I was wrong. Kid's a good driver. His friend is a good driver, right? And I probably would allow that to happen because his reputation preceded. But like there are some, kids at that age, high school, college, they mature faster than others, right? There are some kids that you would not like. I don't want you in the car with that kid. God forbid it's your kid, because I'll say this one. Hopefully she won't hear this one. But like one of my children, after prom, there was a prom house in the state of Michigan. 90 minutes away, right? So you're late night driving. God forbid there's anything illicit. I don't think that anything was happening there, but you know, Jennifer and I have Life 360. I don't know that, but I bet you have it. Do you have Life 360?
I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay, you don't. Okay.
I don't. But I do have their locations
You have their
on.
location. Okay, same
Yeah,
same kind of
I do
idea.
have it.
So Life 360, you'll love this, Christopher. Anyone in your family on it, when they're moving, a little car icon shows. It shows you how fast they're going, what the car is and that. And then so I'm tracking, one of my kids and going to the prom house. I did not know this happened, but in Life 360, if the car goes faster than 85 miles an hour, it turns into a race car with flames shooting out the back. It is hilarious and it scared me to death because I was just like, oh my goodness, what is happening? And it went 85, went 90, it hit 100. And I was like, I was texting like a madman. I'm like, one wrong move and you guys are all dead. No response. It's a race car, flame shooting out. And then I'm like, I'm racking my brain, right? And then I'm like, finally I get to, you're in the state of Michigan. If any of you get pulled over for a speeding ticket, you're losing your license. No questions asked. It gets suspended for 6 months. Racing car goes away right away, right? Because like it's the whole like you can't process long-term consequences, but you can process near-term consequences. So that there's the wisdom is obviously very different from there. But like it's such a thing where I think to your point, like you may not think you have intellectual capital, but and financial capital is, maybe feels like a long way away. But boy, oh boy, do you trust the kids' friends? They treat other people well, they have relationship capital, and their reputation stands ahead of that.
Yeah,
It really matters.
yeah, it does. And you can see it. I mean, we talked earlier about how they build relationships and reputation, and you can show the kids like here is where your reputation is. I told Chris I made my kids write thank you notes at the end of every academic year. And that's a reputation that they have. The teachers from elementary school, middle school, high school all know that they're the ones who write thank you notes. And my kids now write thank you notes all the time.
Thank you notes are huge. Good job, mom. That's really excellent. That's
It's
old
it
school and
is
important.
and they appreciate how much it matters. When they were little and I made them do it, as per talking earlier, Christopher, they hated it. It was a pain in the ass. Like, yeah. And I withheld stuff. Like, you're not going anywhere until these notes are done. So you can hang out in your room without an iPad or a phone or anything until they're done. It's 3 of them. It's not going to take you that long.
So there's the parenting discipline that you held them to a standard that was amazing, and then there's also the I'm saying this. I think my kids they may not know this story, but when parents are vulnerable, also a great way to teach your kids, right? Because hey, we didn't have it all together at that age, and I don't think Christopher, you know this story, but like in college, I was taking a class, international political economy. It was about East Asia and the economics there, and I cheated on an exam. It was not an open book exam. I was taking the exam. I had my textbook on the floor, and I was like, I'm going to go, I know the answer. I don't remember it. So I peeked in the book, wrote it down, and I felt so terrible afterwards. I went to the professor afterwards and I told him, hey, I broke the rules. I cheated on the exam. I just wanted to let you know you can do what you want with it. I remember Professor Dolly Yang, he's still at the same school that I was at, right? So he goes, you know what? That's fine. And I appreciate you telling me that may mean something to me. Don't worry about it. Go on and move on. And I did well in the class. It was probably the first bit of intellectual capital that I really produced. Now that I think about it, you're making me remember all this because it was my senior paper that I wrote because I was studying both political science and economics. And I wrote a paper on how the Chinese automobile industry would follow the same path as the Japanese one and the Korean ones. It would come to dominance if and only if the capital markets were opened by the communists. If the Chinese government, you can steer it, but if you create a capital incentive, a thousand flowers will bloom. And so I was 30 years early on the prediction. If God forbid, like in the next 10 years, you watch, it'll be XPeng, Xiaomi, Huawei. They're all going to dominate. I don't know if BMW, Mercedes, God forbid, the big 3 in the US are going to survive it, but they are going to crush. But I credit that whole experience to learning that your reputation and your relationships matter even when nobody's looking, but then also channeling that into a not quite a passion project, but again, Find a course that you're not memorizing or regurgitating. Find a course that forces you to predict the future. To put what you said, Christopher, my name is going on this. I cannot be wrong about this. Make sure that I'm good with it. Put your name out there, take a risk, and assert the future. You could be wrong, right? But if you get a flavor for that, it'll be the best thing that you can do into the real world, which unfortunately rewards still a lot of memorization and regurgitation.
Yeah, it does. I'm hoping as they move through the academic up into upper classes that there'll be less of that. But certainly freshman classes at UT require regurgitation. Freshman classes at Westmont College and Santa Barbara, not so much.
This this conversation shows us, well, there's some value to knowledge acquisition and regurgitation. There's some shit we need to know and memorize. There's no question about that. That said, the higher order bit is the ability to create, is the ability to innovate, and is the ability to produce outcomes. And Jennifer, you said it a ton off the top, make a difference for others. And this is the other interesting thing about creator capitalists resonating with younger people. There is some backlash, at least in the United States and part of the Western world right now, in younger generations against capitalism. And we knew that when we named the book Creator Capitalists. We're not dumb. We live in the world. But one of the things about teaching young people this is, okay, so what is capitalism? Capitalism only happens when you make something or you deliver something that makes a difference for others in a way that the others say, I'm going to give you my hard-earned money. When the three of us go out to dinner for a nice meal, and let's say the meal costs $100 a throw, that $300, we're saying that food and that experience of being in that restaurant and being together and the whole thing is worth more to us than our money. And oh, by the way, we had to make $600 to pay $300, right? Just in case there's any CFOs on the call. Eddie's our CFO and our CEO, but that's a whole other conversation.
Reluctantly.
I'm the mentally handicapped employee on the performance plan. Anyway, capitalism is all about the exchange of value. And nobody will give you money unless you make a difference. And training yourself to make that difference in a way that produces an outcome that others view as valuable is one of the most powerful things we can teach kids.
Yeah, and I think that as an adult with young people in their lives, whether you're a parent or an uncle or a coach or a teacher, we have that obligation to help these kids. There's no game plan out there, right? They know, and none of us know what's going on. And Eddie, you talked about being vulnerable with your kids, and they need to know that we don't know either. We're trying to figure it out. If we all try and figure it out together, we're more likely to be successful if we have these conversations than if we're not talking. And that communication is always important and more important every day. It's not that you can get on a path and just go.
Can I tell you one thing that a friend of mine told me? Maybe we can land the plane here. His name is Bob Shem. He was a physician, very respected, but he always wanted to be a missionary. I went to church with him. And so probably in his mid 30s, maybe late 40s, late 30s, he quit his job. And then he moved his family to Kyrgyzstan to be missionaries there. And it was like off the chain different and everything else like that. Right. And what he describes is like, if you're a parent of faith, and the greatest predictor of whether your children will follow your footsteps in faith or not has nothing to do with if you make them go to church, nothing to do with what you tell them. It's, do they see you take a leap of faith that might not go well, that makes no sense in sometimes, and that demonstrates that faith is real to you. And if they see that, then the odds are much, much higher that they'll kind of share the same beliefs or whatever else it is. So I think as a parent, and I'm speaking to myself as much as anything else, right, is that, I mean, we wrote about it in Career Quakes, right? Being vulnerable is capital. As an adult, we're supposed to know the answers. We don't know the answers. Being vulnerable with your college age, high school kid, I don't know what the answer is. is valuable. Now, you don't want to scare your kids, right? To the point where they can't handle it. But if they are able to handle it, say, I don't know the answer. Yeah, I'm a little worried, but I'm also excited. Let's figure this out together. Probably the greatest amount of parenting that you could ever do. And we're at the stage, Jennifer, where what we say is it's what they watch us do
Mhm.
matters so much more. And I will tell you, I am scared to death of this next phase of parenting, but so be it, right? So
It's better than
Just
the
pray they make
alternative,
enough
Eddie. It's
money
better than the
to
alternative.
just pray they make enough money to afford the therapy to recover from what you horrible parents did to them.
Yeah, and then make sure that they have uncles like Christopher who they can, talk to
You know,
and sort them out.
as a side note, I think many of us, if not all of us, over time develop grievances towards our parents. We love our parents, but there's things one of the things about becoming an older child, because of course we're always children. We're definitely children while our parents are alive, and I would assert we're still their children when they're not here. But as you become an older child, I think the seminal question is did my parents love me, and did they do the best job that they could given who they are, given the circumstances? And that's almost always the case. There are edge cases. Some people have parents who are criminals and horrible people. That's true. But in most cases, if you just stop and lay down the grievance that you're carrying around like old Samsonites with your parents and go, did my mother and father love me, and did they do the best job they could for me? And if the answer to those questions are yes, and it is almost always the case, then you know what? Okay, so Jennifer was my mother, and she was a pain in the ass because she made me walk to school in the rain. Okay. Sometimes she talks like a drill sergeant. Get over it. And the interesting thing is when you get over that stuff and just go, I don't care about any of that anymore. You know what I know? I love my parents. I'm really glad they're still around, and I want to be with them, and I want to do nice things for them. And just seeing them on my text message or hearing their voice is awesome. And then you go there. I love being in that place with my parents. I just do. Having parents who are older and that you love, and you just say, you know what? The past is the past. I didn't have any big, heavy shit with my parents other than they got divorced, which is big, heavy, I guess. When you just get to that place where you realize your parents are great and just
so
enjoy your parents.
maybe that'll be our next category of Pirates Business, is Christopher telling that to every adult kid out there, because that probably has unlimited pricing power.
No,
Hey, your
just give
parents
it up.
loved you and they did the
It
best they
doesn't
could.
matter. Horrible. I'm not talking about truly horrible things. Okay, that's why I said criminals. I'm not talking about that. If you were abused, I'm not talking about any of that. But most people were not. Most people were loved by their parents, and I think if you haven't surrendered whatever Samsonite you might be dragging around, surrender it. I love being in this place with my parents, where I just love them, and that's it. And end of discussion. It's really easy. It's great.
Yeah.
Amen, brother. Amen.
We're lucky.
Yes, we are. All right. Is there anything else, Jennifer Hall Thornton?
It's your show, dude. You tell me.
All right. Well, I think we're ready to kick out unless
it's
there's
wrapped.
anything else.
Sounds good.